As we have seen, performing ETL processing with SQL code can be quite complex. So, many years ago, in 2005, Microsoft included as part of SSIS a slow changing dimension transformation. And in this video, we will look at that. So here I have a SSIS package, and on it I have a data flow. There's a red dot here because the tables need to be set up before this will work. Using the SQL code, you come over here and make sure that everything was ready to go. Drop the customers table just to make sure we're starting from the beginning. Insert some data, and I'll do the same thing with dim customers. Drop it. Again, just to make sure that starting from scratch and create it. Now there should be a difference between these tables. There is. One row is in the source table, the original table, customers. And in the target table, the one that we're trying to move the data to, the dim customers, there is no data. You notice that I have 3 type 2 columns I'm going to use for this demonstration. A column called start date, end date, and is current. Is current, if you don't put a value in, will automatically flag it as a Y. Now, we're going to go through and set up the SSIS slow changing dimension transformation. To do that, I need to have a data flow. So from the toolbox, I put a data flow on the surface and gave it a name. And I need to have a source. Oops, I got a few artifacts left over. I need to have a source. So I'll drag a source over here. And if I have one already set up, and I do, I can use that. If not, I would click on here and just, there'd be an option to make there's the option here to make a new one. So go ahead and make a connection, or use my existing connection. And then I'll go in here, excuse me, and point to my customers table. Now with the source in place, we can use the slow changing dimension transformation tool. I'll drag that onto the surface and hook it up. Nothing happened there, but if I right click and edit or double click on it, it'll bring up a wizard. And in the wizard, I advance it. I point it towards the dimension table I'm trying to fill up. I have to identify which is the business key column. It takes a look at the input columns. This is coming in from the customers table. And the dimension columns. This is actually in the dimension table. And it finds that these columns are a match, and so lists them. End date, is current, and start date are not a match. So they do not have any option here for the key type. One thing to note is that the columns are in alphabetical order, meaning that the customer ID is actually in the middle here and at the top, as you'd suspect. That's an easy mistake to do by going through and configuring that top one as the business key. Next. Columns can either be changeable, in which case we do a type 1 change. Let's say we just want to go ahead and we'll make the type 1 change of you change it, but I don't track it. Or they can be changeable and tracked as a historical attribute. In addition, if you have any columns that a change occurs and you want it to cause an error, you can set that up as a fixed attribute. We don't have any for this demonstration, so we'll just move on. If you want the data that was in the table previously to be updated at the same time, you can check this box. I'll check it to show you what happens. And in this screen, you need to choose between using a column to indicate when something is current, like putting current or true. Now I have in my table a single character, so I want it to be yes or no. Now if you do that, you don't get the start date and end dates. So this is an issue. It can't do both. It can only do one. So I'll choose start date and end date. And one other thing, when you do this, it's alphabetically sorted. So on the start date, you want to make sure you click on start date. If you click on end date, what will happen is that you have to come back and start the wizard again. Let me show you. End date. Start date. I realized my mistake, and I try to change it, and you can't change it. To cancel and start the wizard again. Double click. It's a little annoying, but it's not a big deal. Next. Dimension table. Careful to get the right column. Going to set email as historic and name as a changing. Historic is type 2, changing is type 1. You just change it and don't track it. Check that box there. And we go back over here, and this time we get it right. Start date, end date. And there's a number of different ways that SSIS can give you a current date or time. We're just going to go ahead and use the start time. That'll also include the date stuff. The inferred member support is for when you're tracking things with a fact table. We're not doing that, so we're just going to disable that. And that's it. We say finish and let it make our different pieces. Now, with this in place, I can go ahead and right-click on the background and execute it. And as I stop it, I go back to my SQL code and verify that it's been synchronized, and we see that it has. Now that's great because you didn't have to do a lot of programming for it to work. However, it's a little deceptive. It's not like we're completely finished, but you have to admit that was an easy way to get it to work. Let's see how they got it to work. The first thing they do is if you have a value that changed, so the changing attribute, you perform this action. I would double click on that box, come over the properties, and I'll see that there is an update statement. The question marks are used as a placeholder. So when it reads a row of data, it examines the customer name and customer ID, and actually it gets the various different values, and uses parameter mapping to fill in the blanks. So the customer name for that particular given row is going to be set, where the customer ID is whatever row it's examining. In other words, it's just going to overwrite the customer name and be done with it. Now this will occur all the way through each row in the table that has a matching ID for what's being looked at currently. This will go through the system over and over and over again, trying to make sure that the names are all synchronized. Now that's just great. But we also need to have the email tracked as a historical attribute. The way they do this is they go through and they first start off with a derived column to pick up the starting time. Then they come down here and they do another OLEDB command using another update. Similar to the one we just saw, but the end date is now being set. The end date is now being set to the start date coming in, where the customer ID is a match, and the end date is null. So that takes care of the end date being updated, and it has to loop through the table over and over again to make sure that this is done. In other words, the update is going to scan through the table for however many rows to make sure that things get updated. If there's 1,000 rows, it'll scan through the 1,000 rows once to get that updated. Once to get this updated, that's 2,000. And of course, now we also have to add in the data that is coming in. So, to get that to work, this is the input coming in. We're going to take that changed value for the start date, and the end date, I'm sorry. We're going to add that in along with an insert of the new row. Customer ID, customer name, and email address. We're going to derive that with the start time And now the pipeline has a ID, a name, and email, and the start time. And that's going to be inserted into the table. End date is going to be taken care of by that OLEDB command, and is current is not taken care of. We have to actually program that ourselves. So with that in place, we can run this, and anytime we make like an update or an insert, and now they'll be out of sync, Rob Smith, R. Smith, Bob Smith, B. Smith, and Sue Jones is a new record. Running that task will go through and synchronize it. And you can see now it's synchronized. Notice that the end date was applied through the update of that OLEDB task. That one. And the idea was that it would go through, and anytime it found a matching record or that had been changed, it would go ahead and apply that end date. It did not, however, apply the is current. We need to program that ourselves, and the wizard can't pick that up. But it should be pretty easy. Basically, we just need to apply a n anytime there is an end date. So where end date is not null, change the y to n. We'll just make some code, SQL code up for that, and run it. The start dates, as you can see, have been applied as it went through and made those changes. The new row was added, and since I have a default value of is current, that was flagged, and this was, of course, flagged as well. So it's pretty dang good. We just need to add some code to switch this over, and we are done with that one. So I'll go ahead and add some code. Let's see, what's the best place to do it? You know, I think the best place to do it was just have it come over here, and I'll execute the SQL task right after to update the flags. So rename update is current flag. Now this means that it's going to do another pass for the table. So far, if there's 1,000 rows in the table, we have a scan of 1,000 rows here for one update, here for another update, and an insert here. That's three times going through, and this is going to be a fourth. This is the downside of this particular tool. It is very inefficient. However, you gotta admit, it's kind of easy. So let's see, I guess I better test my code before I put it in there. Let's come back over here and we'll test it. Taking care of the is current flag. Okay, update the dim customers table. Set the is current column equal to no where the end date column is not null. Okay, we'll test that. Look. We can see that that's been updated, so this is the code we need to run as a part of that. So now if we go through and make some changes, see that. Let's say I go ahead and change Sue Jones's name. So let's see, we'll just go ahead and add a change. I see some tons of spelling issues. We'll add, let's see, update. We'll change an existing row. Okay, this is going to be Sue Jones was the original customer name. Let's make it, I don't know, Spencer. Her email address is going to be spencer@myco.com. And it's going to be customer 200. Okay, so there's the change. And we'll take a look here. You can see the changes occurred there, but it hasn't occurred here. So we're going to go ahead and run this. We're going to need to run the entire thing so we get both of these. And to do that, I can't right-click and run it like I can within a data flow. I have to come over here and right-click and run it from here. So I'll go ahead and execute the task, or package rather, and it'll run through both. Now on the data flow, you can see it still did go through all the individual items. On the control flow, it just has one dot. But that should do it. Let's go ahead and make sure that it actually worked the way we suspect it. I'll do that by just doing a select. We can see that Sue Jones's original record was updated, and actually it changed over to Sue Spencer, which is an issue. The reason why that happened is because we checked that little box in the wizard. Let me show you. This one right here, that would change the matching records, including outdated records, which when the changes are detected. By doing that, it went ahead and lost the old name. So you don't want to normally do this. I really want to uncheck that. Everything else can stay the same. Okay, with that in place, let's go back and reset everything, and we'll run through it. So, let's see here. I'm going to start here at the top, dropping the customers table, inserting our first rows, dropping the temp customers table, and everything's out of sync. We'll run the package again. And things will be in sync like that. So that's exactly what we were looking for. Next, we're going to make some changes. We're going to update Rob Smith and add Sue Jones. Okay. And go back and run this package again. Excellent. Come back over here. And we do a select. We'll see that Sue Jones' new row came in, and it is now synchronized. Bob Smith's change has been added, and it's now synchronized. And you'll notice that it still says Bob Smith on the first one because we unchecked that box. Next, I could go through and update Sue Jones's and run the code again. But of course, at this point, we've actually seen that it works. So, not surprised. I'm going to come back in here and look. We'll see that Sue Jones's record, original record, was kept. Again, because that checkbox was unchecked. Now, if I perform a deletion, you can see Robert Smith or Rob Smith's record has been deleted. I'll go ahead and stop this and run it again. We'll come back to SQL and see what we have. Oops. There's a problem here. The rows were never deleted. Now, they should either be deleted or flagged as being no longer valid. Either way will work, but Obviously, the wizard here did not include any code for that, so we have to program that ourselves as well. To accomplish my goal, I've written some new code. I'm going to collect the IDs that are in the dim customers table, but not in customers, and then apply an update to situations where the end date is null. So that's this row right here. So I have customer 100. Now there are 2 rows with customer 100. I don't want to change this date. I do want to change this date to our current date. So I'm going to look for the one that has a null. And it, of course, is customer 100. I'm then going to change this Y to an N and put in the current date. So if I run this code, it will make that change. Now I'm not going to execute that code here. Instead I'm going to come over here, and I've drug over another execute SQL task onto here, and let me enable it. And I'll put that code in here. Now when it runs, it will take care of the deletion. And coming back over and verifying that SQL Server, you'll see that it did. So you can see Rob Smith's record still exists, but it has been flagged as being having an end date and is no longer current. As you can see, this particular tool is pretty nice, but it doesn't do everything until you put in additional effort. Do keep in mind that it has to go through the table like 5 times here. So if there's 5,000 rows, it's 1,000 rows is going to go through it 5,000 rows, equivalent of 5,000 rows. If you have a 1,000,000 row table, that's going to be a major impact. Plus, in addition to that, just running through the data flow pieces here is substantially slower than using SQL code. Something like using a execute SQL task to kick off that master ETL sprock, which would still have to go through the insert, update, and delete stored procedures, meaning that it'll go through it 3 times, would still be more efficient than using this Microsoft solution. The big advantage is you didn't have to do much coding, but again, you still had to do some. As we'll see in the next video, there's another option that Microsoft has given us. It's the merge command, and our next video is going to highlight that. See you there.